We want to say good morning to Portage and those who are joining us from our downtown location as well as online and out in our lobby in the overflow. Come on, everybody. Can we put our hands together and welcome the rest of our family wherever they are? We love you guys. You know, Easter is all about good news. It was 2,000 years ago that the first witnesses went to the tomb and made the declaration and the discovery that the tomb is empty, the stone has been rolled away. And that's what we're here today to remember, to celebrate. Think about the implications of that. You know, it's been said many, many times, but it bears repeating, that if you go to the tomb of Muhammad today, he's still there. If you go to the tomb of Buddha, he's still there. If you go to the tomb of Joseph Smith, he's still there. But if you go to the tomb in Jerusalem where they believe that Jesus was buried, you're gonna find something different. You're gonna find an empty tomb because he is not there. He is risen indeed. The stone is rolled away. The stone has rolled away, and the good news today is that he is still in the stone rolling business. He still knows how to roll stones away wherever they may be found. And this morning, the title of my message for Easter this year is He Still Rolls Stones Away. And I'm looking at the Gospel of Mark, Mark's account of the resurrection, which is found in Mark chapter 15. If you want to look there, if you brought a Bible, you can turn there. Otherwise, it's going to come up on the screens at all of our locations. But I love the Gospel of Mark's account because out of all four of the Gospels, Mark is the most concise. You know, Matthew kind of fills in all the messianic details. Luke, the doctor, gives all the meticulosity, all the specifics, and makes sure that nothing was left undone. John gives us this high and lofty, ethereal view. But Mark just cuts right to the chase. He just gives it to us as it is. And we're gonna jump into Mark 15, right in the middle of the chapter in verse 42 and start there. And it says, now when evening had come, because it was the preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent council member, who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, coming and taking courage, went into Pilate and he asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate marveled that he was already dead, and summoning the centurion, he asked him if he had been dead for some time. And so when he found out from the centurion, he granted the body to Joseph. And then he bought fine linen, took him down and wrapped him in the linen. And he laid him in a tomb which had been hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a stone against the door of the tomb. And Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, observed where he was laid. And now when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and of Salome, bought spices that they might come and anoint him. Very early in the morning on the first day of the week, they came to the tomb when the sun had risen. And they said among themselves, who will roll the stone away from the door of the tomb for us? But when they looked up, they saw that the stone had been rolled away, for it was very large. And entering the tomb, they saw a young man clothed in a long white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, do not be alarmed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who is crucified. He is risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him, but go and tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you into Galilee, and there you will see him just as he said to you. And so they went out quickly and they fled from the tomb, for they trembled and were amazed. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. This is Mark's account, and one of the beautiful aspects of Mark's telling of the resurrection from the very beginning is that we see it through the eyes of a woman named Mary, or Mary Magdalene. Mary of Magdala. Magdala is the town that as Jesus entered from Nazareth into the Sea of Galilee region, Capernaum area, Magdala would have been the first city that Jesus performed miracles or did ministry in. And Mary, we don't know much about her. A lot of people hypothesize about a lot of different things about Mary the Magdalene, but what we do know about her is that her first encounter with Jesus that she ever had was a day in which Jesus set her free. You see, the Bible doesn't tell us what led to it, but what we do know is that when she encounters Jesus, Jesus finds her possessed by 7 demons. We don't know how they got there. We don't know what she did in her past. We don't know what she was involved in. Some church historians have said, well, she was a prostitute or a woman of ill repute. Others have said that she was into witchcraft. Some have said she wasn't Jewish at all, that she was actually a Canaanite and probably was involved in the worship of false gods and idols. We don't know, but here's what we do know is that something happened in her life that broke her and opened her and made her vulnerable to the torments of hell, made her susceptible to not just demonic influence, but demonic possession. And not just one demon, we're talking 7 demons that took residence and control of her lives. But in just one moment in the presence of Jesus, and just one word from Jesus, her life was forever changed. She was set free. And from that day forward, she followed Jesus wherever he went. She was one of a group of women that were the added disciples. They weren't the 12, but they followed Jesus everywhere that they went. Several of them supported Jesus, probably his prayer team and his encouragement and all. They just loved being around Jesus. Jesus had changed their lives. And Mary Magdalene was one that was closest to Jesus. And imagine for her, knowing what Jesus had done for her, and then watching 1 week ago, as the crowds that cried Hosanna shifted gears and pleaded for him to be crucified. And then they watched him conspired against, betrayed by a friend, lied about by false witnesses, arrested, sentenced to scourging, stripped of his clothes and of his dignity, forced to carry a 300-pound cross. And when his body could physically not carry it any longer, she watched as another man had to carry Jesus' cross. And Jesus was dragged to a place called Golgotha, the place of the skull. And it was there that she watched nails driven into his hands and into his feet, and a crown of thorns crammed onto his head, and him lifted up and suspended between heaven and earth, stark naked, loss of all dignity and honor. The one that she loved, the one that she believed was the Messiah, her hopes and dreams, her friendship was all placed in Jesus, and she watched as he hung there for 6 hours. She listened as the earth trembled upon his last breath and his last words. It is finished. And she watched as Jesus' body drooped and life left him. And she followed them as they took Jesus' body off the cross and brought him. Joseph of Arimathea, this Jewish leader who had believed in Jesus, brought his body to the tomb that he had hewn out of stone for himself, but instead gave it to Jesus. And her and the other women, in their grief and their desperation, just watched as Jesus was placed in this tomb. And a heavy stone, the Bible says, was moved against the door of his tomb and sealed him behind it. It was sealed not just because the stone was heavy. Archaeologists tell us the stone weighed between 1 and 2 tons. This is not a small stone. This is not a Menard's door. This is a 2-ton stone that's leveraged and rolled in front of this tomb. In fact, here's a picture of a first century Jewish tomb that would have resembled the one that Jesus was buried in. You can see the size of the stone that was rolled on tracks that sealed the entrance to the door of the tomb where Jesus' body was laid. But more than just sealed by the stone, it was sealed by the command of the Jewish leaders, and it was sealed with the imperial seal of the emperor of Rome himself. Guards were placed in front of it to break that seal, to attempt to break that seal, was punishable upon death instantaneously. And here's Mary watching his body placed in this tomb and the stone rolled in front of it, leaving Jesus' body in darkness and in the place of death, so close to her, but yet so far away. You see, stones like this, when they were used to seal a tomb, served two purposes. Number one, they serve to seal dead things in the place that dead things belong, in tombs, in graves. And the second thing that a stone like this was meant to do was to separate the dead, the decaying, and the darkness from those things that are living, from the rest of the world where life is. It's ironic that this tomb, the Bible describes, was found in a garden. Just a few feet from where Jesus' dead, scourged, bloody body was wrapped in linen and hidden behind a stone, just a few feet away was a beautiful garden where new things blossomed and lived. The only thing that separated the two was this stone. It sealed Jesus and it separated life from death. And Mary saw where they had placed him. And she had her eyes fixed on the stone that separated her from him. And you know, if we view this part of the story only through the lens of history, it's easy for us to miss it because we live 2,000 years later in the future where we know the rest of the story. We know that the stone did not stay there. We know that his body did not remain there. That's our living hope. But Mary didn't know that. And if we only view this through the lens of the physical stone that was placed in front of Jesus' tomb, we can miss out on one of the most powerful realities of the resurrection story and this resurrection account, and it's this. All of us have stones that have been rolled in front of our lives that separate us from God and seal us in a place of spiritual death. Our tombs that, just like Joseph of Arimathea, we have hewn out of our lives, and we've hewn out of stone. We all find ourselves without the resurrection in a place where we are spiritually dead, left in darkness, in this world, without God and without hope, and no ability to move the stone that separates us from the life outside of ourselves that we know exists, the joy, the peace, the love, the forgiveness, and the grace of God that we all know and that we all want and we suspect is there. We're so close to it, but we've got these stones that have been rolled in front of our lives. And all of our stones look different. You might think to yourself, well, Pastor Lee, I don't have any stones in my life. Well, if you're looking for pieces of granite, maybe you don't, but consider these stones. What about the stone of pride that says, you know what, I don't need God, or I believe in God, but I don't need this like fanaticism. I want to believe in God, but I don't want to get crazy about it because I'm in charge of my own life. Or even some people that take a more arrogant position where it's like religion or faith, that's a crutch for people that just need something to lean on. I don't need anything to lean on. I've got me, I got myself, I got I. Without you even knowing it, I would propose to you that that is an immovable stone. That you don't see as that, but it is sealing you in spiritual death and darkness and separating you from the God who could save you. We say, oh, I don't struggle with pride. What about lust? Lust are desires, our desires outside of God, the desires and the appetites and the dreams that we have that control our lives. What about the addictions that we keep telling ourselves, hey, I'm gonna break free from that. I'm not gonna be a slave to that anymore. I've got control. I don't have to do it anymore. And you go a couple days, you go a couple weeks, but pretty soon that leash gets jerked and the enemy of your soul pulls you back into that addiction. And then you're filled with maybe another stone that maybe you understand, which is shame and the guilt that accompanies you Every time that you give in to those cravings and those appetites and those addictions, the enemy is a liar. He proposes that you need this, and then once you give into it, then he condemns you and shames you for doing the very thing he told you to do. How many of us walk around with the burden and the baggage like a heavy stone that is nothing more than the shame and the guilt and the condemnation from our past? How badly we wish we could rewind the tape sometimes. How badly we wish we could go back and do it all over again. It serves like a stone that separates us and seals us. And sometimes the stones in our life are the lies that we have believed about ourselves, about others, about the world, lies even that we believe about God. Well, why would God ever want me? Or, you know what, I'm gonna do a whole lot more good than all the bad of my past, and hopefully it's gonna make up for it. Can I just tell you that that's a lie, because you'll never be able to do enough good to overcome even just one sin and one failure and one mistake. God's a holy God, and he who sins even once violates all of the law. It's like, so what are you telling me? There's no hope. No, I'm actually telling you there's a lot of hope, but the hope that you're looking for is not found on Amazon. There's no book on Amazon on do-it-yourself and self-improvement. There's no salvation for dummies on Amazon that's gonna fix your broken, dead, decayed, sealed, separated soul. There's no PDF that you can download. There's no app that's going to change things. You see, the stones of our life are the sins, the beliefs, the failures, the fears that block us from the life that we desire, the peace that we long for, and the joy that we know is out there. We keep searching for these things, though. That's what we live our life searching for. But you know what's interesting is we search for them in all the wrong places. We search for them in the graveyards. We're looking for them among the tombs. We're looking for life in dead places. We go to the bar, maybe it's there. A relationship, maybe it's there. Slide left, maybe it's there. Another drink, another drug, another achievement, another crown, another dollar. And we think these things are gonna move the stone. They're gonna change my life. None of them are gonna change us. Why? Because they're graves. They're places of death. They're places where dead things go. And the only thing walking around is the living dead. Ephesians chapter 2 describes God's posture towards us and the rocks that separate us from him. It says, but God, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, here we are, that's spiritually dead. He has made us alive together in Christ Jesus. By grace you've been saved, and he's raised us up together. This is God's attitude towards us. He says, I see the stone that separates you from me. I see your spiritual death. I know that you can't move the stone. How many have ever tried to move something that's way heavier than you have the capacity to move? I'll never forget the day that Jane's mom and dad had a piano in their basement years ago, and they said, hey, anybody who wants this piano can have it. You just gotta come and get it. And Mike Popenhagen, who was our worship pastor at that time, said, hey, I want that piano. And he recruited me and John Zondervan to go with him to get the piano. Sure, I'll help. And I underestimated the steepness of the stairs out of their basement. Back before there was code, narrow, like crawling up into an attic level steepness. And of course, the piano is about 450 pounds. And so we rolled it over to the staircase, and they put me at the bottom of it. John Zondervan's trying to pull it. Mike's trying to pull it up the stairs. We get about halfway up the stairs. I got my shoulder into it, and John is like, my fingers hurt. I need to take a break. And I said, John, if you take a break right now and I die, I promise you, I'm going to resurrect from the dead, and I'm going to kill you. Do not let go of the piano. I have no idea to this day how we got that piano up the stairs. But it seemed impossible to move. Imagine a 1 to 2 ton stone. I don't know what the stone is that today separating you from God, or has separated you, or that has sealed you and kept you in a place of spiritual death and darkness. But we all find ourselves asking the same question that Mary Magdalene asked as she was going to the tomb that first morning as the sun rose. You see, she knew she wanted to care for Jesus. She wanted to anoint his body. She wanted to serve him, but she knew that the stone, she could not move. And so as they are going, she's asking the question, who will move the stone for us? Who will roll away the stone for us? Who will roll it away? We can't do it. Who's gonna roll it away for us? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Who can fix me? Who can help me? Who can save me? Who do I reach out to? What do I have to do to be right with God? How many times am I gonna try to do it myself? This was Mary's major concern. She knew where Jesus was, she just couldn't get to him. They had watched when Jesus had been buried. They know exactly where he's at. But she also knew this. She wasn't strong enough to roll the stone away on her own. And neither are we. Neither are we. Romans 5, verse 6 through 10 says, when we were utterly helpless. That's really the condition that all of us are in, that we need to be honest about. That we are utterly helpless. It says, but when we were utterly helpless, that's when Christ came at just the right time and he died for us sinners. Now, most people will not be willing to die for an upright person, though someone might perhaps be willing to die for a person who's especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. And since we have been made right by God, by the blood of Christ, he will certainly save us from God's condemnation. For since our friendship with God was restored by the death of his son while we were still his enemies, we will certainly be saved through the resurrection life of his son. That's exactly where all of us are. We are utterly helpless to fix ourselves. Only Jesus can roll the stones away that keep us from God and lead us out into the new kind of life. That's why we're here today. We're not here to just motivate ourselves and say, you know what, because Jesus got up, so can we. Because Jesus pulled himself up, we just need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and we need to imitate Jesus and be better versions of ourselves, or we just need to try harder or be a little bit better or sin a little bit less. No, we need to come to terms with we are utterly helpless. And there is a stone bigger than I can move that without Jesus separates me from him. I'm in a place of death, and I'm even in a place of, in some ways, being an enemy of God. But in that moment, that is when Jesus came and died for me. And that is when Jesus on the third day kicked the stone out of the entrance of his tomb and stepped out of death into marvelous light, out of the place of darkness into the garden. And because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future. You see, when they showed up at the tomb, the Bible says they lifted up their eyes. When they lifted up their eyes, they saw that the stone had been rolled away. Who's gonna roll the stone away? And then they show up and they see, wait, the stone's moved. The tomb is empty and he's not there. It's interesting. It says when they looked up, that's when they saw that the stone had been rolled away. How much of our lives do we live looking down? Jane and I grew up in the 80s. The only mobile phones we had, you carried around in a bag, and they were about this big and had a big antenna, and there were a few people that had them, but nobody walked around with your phone. You kept it in your car, or you knew somebody that had one. Today, everybody's got a phone. And you know what I observed a couple months ago when I was in New York is walking through Manhattan, people live like this. Have you ever noticed that? It's like looking down at their phones. We look down. And you don't even have to have a phone to live your life with your head down. Because when you look down, all you can see is where you are. All you can see is what's around you right now, in this moment. And if you live like that, you have no perspective. You can literally miss what's 2 feet in front of you. You're aware of what's behind you, but you're living with your head down. Amazing things happen when you look up. I'm not just talking about physically look up. I'm talking about moments in our life, defining moments, much like this moment, where we actually lift up our focus to a higher level and we begin to think not just about the immediate, not just about the temporal, not just about this moment, but we think about eternity, we think about what's important, and we realize that this life is just a vapor. When we lift up our eyes, everything changes. The psalmist said this, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. It's when you look up that things begin to shift and change. It's when salvation can find you. It's when God can lock eyes with you and communicate to you the real value and the real love that he has for you, and the dreams and the desires that he has for you, and the power and the strength that he has available to you to roll away the stone and to break off the burdens and to set you free, just like Mary Magdalene had experienced. And here she is again, coming to the grave thinking that it's all up to her, but in one moment of looking up, she realizes it has nothing to do with me because it's already finished. The stone has already been rolled away, and Jesus is no longer dead, he's alive. Oh, it's a powerful moment when you lift up your eyes and realize, I can't fix myself. When you realize Jesus really did come and he really did die as the Son of God for my sins, and then he really did rise from the dead, and the stone has been rolled away and he's not there any longer. You know, the other gospel accounts say that when they looked inside of the tomb, the only thing that they saw inside of the tomb was the grave linens that had covered Jesus's bloody body had now been folded up. Jesus literally folded up his linens and set them down on the platform where his body was. That tells me a lot about Jesus. He folds his own laundry. To me, that's just so wild. Why would Jesus, here he is, he's rising from the dead. Why does he take the time to fold it up? Because he's put all things in order. He's taken death, he's taken sin, he's taken the stains and the mark and the shame and the humiliation and the condemnation, and he's dealt with it. He's not just quickly cast it off to the side. He's put it in order, and he's left it where dead things go to die and never to come out again. But that's not where Jesus is. The marks of his past, the leftovers of his humiliation and his shame are left in the tomb. And the good news is he came out glorified. And in the same way, G.K. Chesterton, I love this, he's a British theologian and a scholar from the last century. He said this, Easter is us recognizing that you and I have a Savior who knows his way out of the grave. Oh, isn't that good? Jesus knows his way out of the grave, and on his way out, he left the past behind and he came out in the newness of life. And he stepped out into the garden. And every time that we approach Easter, just like Mary approached the empty tomb, and saw that the stone had been rolled away and that the grave was empty. Every time that we come, the question is, do we believe? Jesus said in John chapter 11, he said, whoever believes in me, though he dies, yet shall he live. Do you believe this? Do you believe this? In 2011, Jane and I made our first trip to Israel. It was a tour that we took. I'd always wanted to go. I've been a few more times since then, but it was our first trip. And there's so many things. There's so many places in the Bible that I had dreamed of seeing, because I've read the Bible, heard about the Bible most of my life. And I wanted to see where David slayed Goliath. I wanted to stand on the mountain where Elijah called down fire on Mount Carmel. I wanted to take a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee. All of those things were powerful. The most powerful, by far, was the Garden Tomb in Jerusalem. A place that some believe was where Jesus was buried and where he rose again. It's a beautiful tomb, much like the one we just showed you. And when you go there, you can feel the presence of the Lord. It's a beautiful garden. Golgotha is within eye shot. And here's this tomb that Christians have visited and prayed at for 1,800 years. At least recognizing that there's something significant about it. And so here we are. It's one of our last days in Jerusalem. We're at the Garden Tomb. We're standing in line, and they're letting us 2 by 2 go into the tomb. And you can step down into it. It's a room of about maybe 10 by 10, 12 by 12, something like that. And when you step down into the tomb, directly to your right, there's a steel gate with a little door that separates you from the platform of which Jesus' body would have been laid. Jane and I stepped down into it, and you could just feel sacredness of this place in this moment. And then right on our heels came 2 more pilgrims that they allowed into the tomb, being led by a guide, because these 2 that came in were blind. And I remember thinking to myself, what good is this doing them? They can't see anything. And then they did something unprecedented. The guide actually had the key and unlocked the gate, opened it, and allowed them to go in to the place where they would have laid Jesus' body. And I saw these 2 blind pilgrims go in, and they put their hands on the platform where they would have laid Jesus' body. And if I remember correctly, there were tears streaming down their face. And in that moment, I got it. I actually felt in that moment, I heard a whisper in my spirit that said, I knew it had to be the Lord, because I would have never come up with this. It said, blessed is everyone who comes to this place and knows they're blind, for then they shall leave seeing. And I realized something. Sometimes we come to Easter, the empty tomb, and we think we see it clearly. But also sometimes we come to Easter and the cross and the resurrection and what Jesus has done, and we don't realize how blind we really are. We don't see the stones that have been rolled in front of our lives that are separating us from God and holding us in a place of death. But I've got good news for you today. Jesus still rolls stones away. He still rolls stones away. When we acknowledge and we recognize, I'm dead in my sin, I can't fix myself, I'm separated from God, I'm separated from the life and from the love that I'm longing for, and I can't move this stone, I can't change me. But Jesus, by his death, burial, and resurrection, has rolled the stone away for me. And Jesus knows the way out of the grave, and he's inviting every single one of us who've not yet done this. Follow me out of death. Follow me out of your self-dependence. Follow me out of the lies of this world. Follow me out of the place where dead things go to die, and follow me back into a new creation, a new life, where you'll find the joy, the love, the salvation, the community, the relationship with God that you've always longed for. I know the way out of the tomb. Follow me. And just like Jesus invited all of his disciples, follow me. If we'll respond to him today, the life that Jesus walked out of the tomb with is available to you and to me.